Hey everyone, Jim from Let's Get To, and we're coming to you from Dell Diamond, home of your Round Rock Express. They're celebrating Military Appreciation Day, but this episode begins our annual Memorial Day episode. I talk on the show all the time about my veteran experience, what that's meant to me, how it shaped me, and I understand that Memorial Day means a lot of things to a lot of different people. For many, for most, it's the beginning of summer, but for a lot of us, veterans and Gold Star families, it's about remembering those soldiers in our lives that didn't come home, that paid the ultimate sacrifice. There's a song quote that said, "All gave some, but some gave all." So just remember all those people that can't spend time with family, can't be out at a beautiful ballpark like this, because, again, they made the ultimate sacrifice. Keep them in your mind just a little bit this weekend.
Oh, it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Twitchy Dolphin Media presents Let's Get To. It's baseball from sea to shining sea by the team that brings you home. And now, your host, James Christopher.
Hello, I'm James Christopher, and welcome to our Let's Get To Memorial Day special episode. Every year on this show, we do a Memorial Day episode, and I really can't see a situation where if this show is still going strong, that episode doesn't exist. Like I said in the opening, Memorial Day is important and means a lot of things to a lot of different people. And those things and those meanings can vary from person to person. For students and teachers, I'm a teacher, it's usually the merciful end of a school year. For others, it's that first long weekend of summer. For many, and I would guess all of this show's audience, it's about really diving into baseball season, and if you're a Major League fan, the first time you're allowed to look at the standings. And look, all of that is okay. It's more than okay. It means all of those things to me too. Now, I preface this segment with the caveat that I do not think that we should worship the military. We're not a third world country. Those Soviet-style military parades don't really interest me, and in fact, I find them kind of gross. On the other hand, I talk openly on this show about being a veteran. 7 years in the Army as a fire support sergeant, deployed to Bosnia in the mid-90s, a few close calls, left the Army with 2 blown knees, more than a few friends who didn't come home from Afghanistan, Iraq, and other parts unknown, and a few others that lost their battles years after deployment due to PTSD, depression, and suicide. So that then begs the question, what does Memorial Day mean to me? For me, at a macro level, it's about the 23,000 Union soldiers killed at Gettysburg. It's about the 29,000 Americans killed at Normandy. It's about 545 American dead at the Ia Drang Valley in Vietnam when that war was first starting. It's about 18 dead Americans in Mogadishu, Somalia, including bodies dragged through the street. For me, it's about every American soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine who raised their right hand, swore to defend this country, and then paid the ultimate sacrifice. Now, some might ask if I share an equal sense of loss for Allied troops or maybe even the Confederates in the Civil War, and I really don't. I think having worn a uniform allows me to hold such prejudices. Now, the key thing to remember is Memorial Day is not a day for those still serving. It's not a day for those who served and came home and get to enjoy the gifts that my fallen brothers and sisters gave us. It's not a happy holiday for those who served and came home and then the families of those that fell. It's a day where we focus on the empty seat at the table, the one that will never be filled again. It's about the loss of life and the loss of a future and the loss of promise given up by those brave men and women. I don't think Memorial Day should be spent in a state of mourning, a nationwide wake, or a situation where all of America sits Shiva together. But what I think we should do is take a second to realize that the freedom we have came thanks to the spilling of American blood on foreign soil, or in the case of the Civil War, in the South in an effort to preserve the Union. Now, if you see me at a ball game, you'll see that I salute the flag for the anthem. It's my moment to reflect on friends lost, on their sacrifice, and the sacrifices of many that built this country. That it happens at a ball game for me makes it a much more religious experience. So if you see another vet at the game, feel free to thank them for their service, but don't be surprised if they seem distant or far away. Our hearts are with our brothers and sisters who are not coming home, who don't get to go to a ball game. Those that died gave their lives so that we could be free. And on Memorial Day, just take a second to recognize that a lot of families and a lot of people aren't whole because of those sacrifices. Give them at least a second's thought, and then please go on and enjoy your picnic, your hot dog, or your ball game.
Ladies and gentlemen, please adjust your scorecards. We have a special guest in the lineup.
Please adjust your scorecards. We have a special guest. Oh, wait. But let me tell you first, this is your host, the Dadhead Chronicles podcast host, Ed Rivera. That's right. And our special guest is none other than the host of Let's Get To, Jim. What is up, my friend?
I don't know. We're like in bizarro Let's Get To. It's like, let's
really
get negative.
Bizarro.
But not negative, it's positive. No, I'm excited to be here, and thank you so much for taking over the show for us on this very special episode that we're doing.
I'm so excited to be part of this when you asked me to be part of the show. And I'm like, absolutely. There was no hesitation. They're like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go. Absolutely. So obviously, obviously everybody knows who this guy is, right? This is his show. I'm the Dadhead Chronicles host, by the podcast host, right? So my name is Ed Rivera. Obviously, everybody knows probably now, should know by now. That's right.
Let's hope so. If they're not, right? If they don't, they should.
They will know. But I'm here as your host. I am going to be asking Jim a couple of questions, right? We're celebrating his show. Happy 5th anniversary, my friend. How exciting.
Yeah. Dude, let me tell you, first of all, it was so good for you to be out at the party. That episode, I guess by the time this episode comes out, dropped last week. But man, I'll be honest, and I talk about you in the opening monologue of the show that came out today, but it's a whole thing. But I was so touched to see you and Paul and Donnie out there. And I'll tell you why. Like, first of all, you guys have your own shows, your own agenda. It's a very generous person to celebrate someone else. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And it really touched me. And also seeing Donnie come up, we'll talk about zero dogs in the fight, right? Like he made the trip up. And I don't know, it was one of those days where I looked around and I thought, I'm pretty happy right now.
How cool is it though, right? Like, listen, I have my own podcast. I have my own thing going on. But when you invited me to go over there, I thought it was the coolest thing because there's something to be said about people in the minor league world that we live in, right? That we all, operating in, that you don't get in any other sport, right? Major League Baseball, NFL, any of that, right? We're all supporting each other. And I think that's one of the coolest things why I love what I do. We do it for the love of it, right?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, and I talked about this in the monologue. I did not know, I don't know about you, I did not know this was out here. I loved it. I wanted to do a show about it thinking, I did not realize that there was this whole like sub-community of people. And look, I love the fact that you and I and Paul have kind of, I don't want to say become leaders in the community, but we've kind of become the people check with, and that's kind of neat. And I just never had any of those expectations. I didn't know. I thought I was kind of nuts for doing it. So yay for being nuts.
But you know what? That's the beauty of it, right? That is the beauty of what, because we all doing different things, but yet at the same time, we're still putting a spotlight, if you say, right, on minor league baseball, which is awesome. It's amazing. So
totally, 100%. And I'm just like, again, I'm tickled to have sort of been welcomed into this community. And I'm so proud of that fact that we were so welcomed in.
Absolutely. All right. So let's get to it, man. All right. So let's learn more about Jim, the man, the host of this show, right? I mean, because obviously, if you guys don't know by now, this is a great and absolute wonderful show that you highlight not only the baseball team, right, but you highlight the town, cool things to do there. So everybody should be getting to know more about this. So and like I said, I'm very honored to do this. So, but what I want to know is, like, the first thing is, take me back to that time when you were like, I think this is a good idea, right? Like, I think this will be a good idea. Why did you decide to do it? Tell me.
It dovetailed out of two things. One, it dovetailed out of me kind of feeling like I had said all I wanted to say at the independent film level that we were working at, which is very like micro budget. But I was also kind of growing increasingly tired of the fakeness of that community. And we were literally, Scott McIntyre and I were sitting at a film festival, and he could just tell like I was hanging on to an edge of sanity. And he heard about a baseball game that was a convenient hour away. And we snuck off to the Drillers, and we'd been to Express games and we'd go to a lot of Astros games, but sitting at the Drillers game, I kind of just, and it was empty, right? Because it was a doubleheader and we went to like the 2:00 game, but to see the staff still putting forth the same energy to entertain the handful of fans that were there, I just fell in love. And then I think it sort of dovetailed into also being able to fulfill those kind of creative juices that weren't getting filled by making films. I made 15 independent feature films. I made the last one, which was an amazing experience, and did not want to risk it tainted, which is a big reason why we walked away. And so it really felt, it went from something that I love about baseball to also fulfilling a very creative juice that was still kind of burning inside.
There's something to be said about going to a ball game, right? Sitting there and just taking it all in. So was that was the moment that you looked at Scott and you said, I think I have an idea.
I'll be honest too. The idea was planted there, and I didn't even necessarily talk to him about it until, weeks later. And I remember vividly, we came up with the name Let's Get To. The following December, I was walking around the mall, getting my steps before. I'm a mall walker, before we went to a movie. And, we were just throwing names back and forth. But yeah, I think there was this aha moment when we're sitting there at the ball game and we're drinking beers and we're just bullshitting. And we're just, again, like you said, taking it all in, and it's not intense and it is just relaxing. And listening to him talk about the game, because he played professionally. And so yeah, it was this kind of whole deal that I think culminated in a weird way I didn't expect. And then again, that December, deciding I was going to do this and figuring out what it was. And I made mistakes, Ed. I didn't introduce a video component for a year and a half in, and I'm a professional filmmaker, and I never thought to myself, but didn't know how it would work, but walking around and then just being like, I think we can do this, and I think we can pull this off, and I think it'll be something that's really, really going to be fulfilling to us, and it absolutely has been.
And I think I've told you this before, but when I really got into the podcasting world, right? This is when I got into the whole Twitter world, creating my own brand and everything. And I ran across your channel, which is, funny enough, your channel was one of the catalysts that got me to that. You know what I mean? I'm like, man, I want to do this as well. I've always wanted to be in radio. So I'm like, I can do this too. Right. And I think that's when our friendship really started. And
yeah. And I'm going to cut you off because I'm going to give you a compliment, because you can't know, in the indie film world, you can't know how many people tell me they can make a film, and you can't know, I remember, Jess was telling me a story about how she was at an event, and she was having a few, and a friend of hers said that, and she's like, you have no idea how hard he works. It's easy to say that. You're one of the few people who went from, I'm going to do this thing, to doing it and growing it and being like, you're one of the few people in the space that I used to interact with that actually followed through. And I remember bouncing names off. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like you really, so that's my compliment to you, man, is my friendship with you came out as much out of you being an amazing guy to also being somebody that can follow through, and I think can speak my language a little bit. So yeah, I think that's a big part of it.
So let me ask you, because you did, you said you started it in the audio form, which, by the way, I think is extremely hilarious that you, like you said, someone who does film decided to do an audio format podcast.
I'm not a smart man, Janae.
I never said I was smart, right? But So obviously everybody knows, like, listen, you can start a podcast with your own cell phone and all that stuff. Everybody can do it. You know what I mean? Uh, but putting a product out there, it is extremely hard to do.
Yeah.
When you decided to do video, like, I know that those gears of yours were they were working, right? Like, I mean, you're like, man, I can do this, I can do that, put us in that mindset.
Yeah, I mean, and if you remember, if you go back to it, you're pretty instrumental. I mean, you've been instrumental in all of it because I'm always bouncing segment ideas off of you, but I still didn't know. And what it came from was almost accidental, where one, the pandemic helped because it introduced us to Zoom. So there's one good thing about the pandemic.
Yeah.
But, I was being gracious and getting all these opportunities to go cover teams. And I had all this amazing footage with nowhere to put it. And sometimes I would remember to kind of do a montage and put it on YouTube or whatever, but nothing felt directionful.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think when it became clear that I could also incorporate the interviews, that's where it started. One of the things that you were instrumental in helping me in is, remember when I went from the decision of, it used to kind of be all over the place to now every episode deals with a city and so it's still a work in progress.
But aren't we all?
I mean, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And there've been some ideas that I had that didn't work, and some ideas that I had that ended up being way harder than I thought. And, there's still some evolutions to go, but I don't know about you, man, because I know you're like also growing your video imprint. I don't know that I would keep doing it if it just sort of became a thing I woke up and did and went to bed. Like if it became that easy or that uninteresting to perform.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. I agree with you there. Let me ask you, because obviously I want to know the reasons, right? Like, I mean, yes, you decided to do it and everything, but there has to be, like, we discussed, you're a veteran and all that. And I want to speak on that because I'm sure there's a connection there, right? With everything that you're doing. So, give me something on that, my friend.
There's a couple of things, and I will be honest too. Like, I'll start off with the caveat of knowing that, I did have a major deployment, and I had the luxury, at least, of not having to explain to civilians why it was good or why we needed it. We're coming to the point now where we're kind of revising the history of whether we should have gone to Afghanistan or not. That's a whole other conversation for a whole other different show.
It's a whole different podcast.
Whole different thing. But I kind of refer to this show as like me being on like every so often in the Captain America comics, he would get on a motorcycle and ride around the country.
Right.
And it kind of became that for me, where wanting to see the country that I defended and explore some of the spaces that you wouldn't go to if they didn't have a baseball team, and experiencing that kind of culture. Then the other part of it for me became, particularly in the minor leagues, if you look at a baseball diamond in the minor leagues, that's America working the way America's supposed to work.
Mm-hmm.
You have people of all different ethnicities, all different languages, all together working in a common goal. Mm-hmm. And when you look at how divisive our politics have been at the macro level, there's something refreshing about seeing that. The anthem at a ball game is really, really important, I think, because except for the times when I have to like sort of glare someone in to stop preparing their hot dog, which happens
dude,
all the time. Right. I don't care if you kneel and protest quietly, but Jesus Christ, you don't need a beer right then.
Right. Just hold on for a second. We got this. Just
calm down. But I think that was those two things. I think that in many ways, it gives me hope for all of this thing, because I still believe that America works best when it is a melting pot and we're borrowing from each other, and we're all, and that's, I mean, there's the line in the movie Stripes, we were all kicked out of every good country in the world to come here. And so I think that there's a part where it's working best that way. And I think you see it, you see it as well as I do. I think people are too hard on small town America. They have painted a bridge of it where I have gone to collegiate summer league towns and met ballpark parents who have kids from Puerto Rico or kids that are black and they're white, and they talk about them like they're their kids. And I think there's nothing more beautiful than that.
We as a society, right? We think that, oh, it's the big city. This is where it's at, the major leagues. And And honestly, and you know, like you, I've come to have such a huge amount of respect and love for small town, for minor league baseball, collegiate wood bat, all these, because it's like you said, you see America, right?
Yeah.
And it's at its finest there.
And you'll go to a small town in Indiana where they're having Pride Night, and you think to yourself, "Whoa, I thought you all were supposed to hate the gays and everyone, only people on the left and right coast." And it does, I think, really undo and rewire some of the misconceptions that were being fed about what this country is and isn't. So I think it's definitely a big part of all that for me.
I think we have a long way to go, but I think that, you know, as you, like you said, I mean, there's hope for all of us. Yes, just yet.
Yeah, a hope, and I think that hope is in baseball in so many ways. And
yeah,
I don't know why that is. I mean, and look, there's lots of problems. We could talk, especially at the major league level, the lack of representation of African Americans in that sport, and I think that's really more of a function of poverty versus not. But I still think, you know, where else can a kid like Jose Altuve sign a $10,000 check and then work his ass off to become what he is? And so I think it's beautiful. Maybe it's the romantic in me, but I love seeing that displayed out on the diamond.
Tell me, you know, and obviously coming out from this, like, there's, you know, if a lot of people don't know about my podcast, I have my conversations are like, I have my set is only have 3 questions, and then everything else is as the conversation goes.
Yeah.
So here's one of those questions where as the conversation goes, right? You and me are fans of the Copa brand.
Yeah.
Right. And tell me, how do you feel like the fact that, like, African Americans, whites, Hispanics, they're all wearing a Copa brand for that minor league team on the specific day?
1000%. I love it. And not only that, but some of the brands are loud. And to see this like 55-year-old white dude walking around with, like, what was the one in Greenville, like the frog with all the, no, I do really, really dig it. And, you know, I love it when you see, like, particularly a city or, you know, cities like in Texas where there's a large, like, particularly a Mexican population, and those brands refer, it isn't just they made them like Los Hooks in Spanish, like, you know, the Hooks
does.
Yeah, they really went out of their way to create several identities actually that represent that. So no, I think it's where, look, I think we can all get fired up about the divisiveness of what happens. But I think that if we were all to sit back and look, we like the fact that we are borrowing all from each other's culture.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you wear green and drink on St. Patrick's Day. You don't look very Irish.
Got that right, I do. I got plenty of pictures to prove it.
Those pale legs you're talking about on Twitter, that's my Irish side. So, yeah, it's just, I'm glad you brought up Copa, because I think it's, if anything illustrates this thing, it's perfect. And I love that every year more teams want to do it. And I think that's
and
just,
it keeps growing. Yeah.
Growing and growing and growing. And now teams are refreshing their Copa brand because, you know, they sell. And I mean, you know as well as I do, man, like, and Patrick Larson's the worst, because that dude will send me links to stuff on sale. And I'm like, bro,
he is such a bad influence.
Oh, yeah, totally. I bet he's like, Ed, I bet there's a dad hat. I'm like,
oh yeah, he does. Yeah, he sends me the links. Don't you worry. Exactly.
Yeah. Him and Andrew Nelson for me. Quit spending my money.
Right.
I'm doing just
Andrew
fine.
Nelson has sent me a couple of links. I'm like, dude, you got to chill. My wife is going to kill me. Calm down.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So another brand that really, you know, that I think you have identified with has been, you know, armed forces, right? Like, you know, the celebration of that. Although you've had your reservations about some of the hats that they have put out there, right? And you and me have had this discussion.
Yeah.
However, you're wearing one right now, which I am a fan of. Like,
yeah,
this armed forces one has been a really, I thought about giving me a couple of those, to be honest with you.
So I've got 3, and I'll be honest, it's 2 years in a row for me too, because I actually liked last year's too. And I think I liked last year's because the camouflage pattern was the same one I wore, and I think I felt a connection.
Yeah.
Some of them, I don't know. Sometimes I get I'm a hunter vibe, and I don't dig that. But no, I got this one. The one I'm wearing right now is the River Bandits, and I felt like I knew I wanted another one. And I got theirs because if you follow the River Bandits, they're in danger again of having their stadium flooded. The Mississippi is rising, so I wanted to at least throw a little bit of money to that organization. Yeah. But yeah, I like that you can celebrate it and it not be obtrusive. And, you know, we talk about theme nights, you and I privately, but also on the show a lot. And like, I've never been a one where you have to worship the military. Like the idea of like these Soviet era, like military parades kind of gross me out.
Yeah. I'm with
I
you
like, right. But I like at a ballpark, one, you can have a military appreciation day one day, and then faith and family night the next night, and then princess night, and then pride night. Like everyone really is welcome through these doors. But yeah, I think this one works for me because it is so subtle, and you get that nice kind of just, I don't know. I think the OD green feels good.
I love the OD green, right?
Yeah.
You know what it reminds me of, to be honest with you? The show MASH.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I made weirdly enough, on Go-Go Astros this week, I referred to myself as the Hot Lips Houlihan of baseball podcasts. So we're on brand. There
we go. So, but that's what I'm trying to say though, right? Like you're highlighting, you go to different events, like you go to it's like, okay, this month I'm going to go here because it makes sense, but you don't know what kind of theme night they're going to have. Right. And the beauty of your show is that you're like, I'm going to embrace it. Like, I mean, for God's sakes, we were at the Storm Chasers, right? And it was take me out to the ballpark, right? Like,
I had to see cats, man. I had to go on a mission for cats.
Right. Exactly. So there's a beauty of that you're highlighting. And, you know, tell me, you know, what does that mission mean to you as a person? And then also as a podcaster and content creator that you're highlighting that, right? Like, I mean, it's Pride Night, like, and a lot of people are going to say, oh, here we go. But you still do it because it's important.
Yeah. And look, I'll be honest, Pride Night, I'm down to go to. Faith and family night's not my bag. And, but if I'm happen to be there, I'm going to cover it. There's the selfish thing of, you know, we do cover a lot of the same teams every year. We're on the Hooks every year. We are on the Express every year. So a theme night makes it easy to sort of reintroduce that brand without being repetitive of the season before. But I think it still goes back to that community because you're going to get people out to a ball game that you might not have gotten. And I saw it play out when we were in Traverse City last year, Jessica and I and Scott, and I'd made us like official Princess Night t-shirts for Let's Get To. And we were out there, and here is a girl dressed head to toe like Elsa, and she's got two hats from the pitch spinners because she couldn't figure out which one she wanted. She wanted them both. A baseball fan was born that day who came out to meet Disney princesses. And so minor league baseball seems to be the only mass industry these days that's trying to grow their brand by telling everyone you can come. And look, if I'm going to be a little sarcastic and curmudgeonly like my co-host Andy Tom Chesson, if you go to Pride Night, there's no recruiting booths. It's not going to make you make out with a dude for something. Right. It's just, but you also don't have to go. And if you go, you can just ignore it and focus on the baseball. But I just love the idea that they make so much effort to bring people together. And I'm going to be out in Omaha again in 2025. And Marty said there might be Jaws night. So,
I don't know. I might have to be there.
I'm about to say, yeah.
Right. That's amazing.
Since our guy in Colombia didn't come through for me, I think Marty might.
We're going to have to talk
to
that
John.
Guy in Colombia. Right. And, you know, something about, like you said, like, you know, this whole theme of minor league baseball, right? Minor league baseball survives on, you know, ticket sales and, lo and behold, merchandise sales. Yeah. Right. So the fact that like you and me, I mean, if you guys are looking at, you know, on the YouTube channel, right, on your channel, I have a bunch of hats back there.
Yeah.
Right. And talk to me about that need for supporting the minor league team, not only as covering it, but also you're spending your own money on there as well.
Yeah, there was a couple of guidelines that we set up when we set up with the show, and one of that was we weren't going to ever ask for free stuff. Some teams have done it, and it's generous and sweet, and we appreciate it. We even buy our own tickets because honestly, a ticket price to me is not that expensive. But if I'm going to take up a space, I want the team to get the money back.
Yep.
But I do believe in it. And look, like you have more hats up than I do, but neither of us together have as many hats up as Eric Mertens does, right? Like
no.
Like how that guy must have married an angel to have that in his living room. Because let me tell you, I might sneak a hat down there just to see what happens. I bet you it won't be good.
Same here, man.
Yeah, it's all fine up in the space. But there are hats that I buy that never make it up here that go right into storage because I'm not a 5950 wearer and I don't. I feel like I have to display a lot of different stuff, and so, but I feel like, if spending $40 on a hat, or sometimes 70, because I get one to wear and one to put away, helps a small business stay in business, a small business that's not only including people, but also like being anchors of a community. Like at our end of the year awards, we always give an award out for the best community partner. And, you know, the Express opened up Dell Diamond for tornado victims one year. Like they're doing more good than most other organizations, and they're doing it all on the margin. And if you remember the pandemic as well as I do, like those teams were helping out, not ensuring if they were going to even exist anymore, but they were still out there working on it. So I feel like, you know, however much money I spend in a year on stuff, it's still worth it for the joy and satisfaction it's bringing me. So it's a selfish move as much as anything.
I'm 100% with you. It's that's why I started, to be honest with you. I was like, one, for the love of collecting, because that's how I started. I started collecting. I was like, all right, I'm going to support small business in my own way during the pandemic, so I'm going to buy a hat. Here we go.
I also support George Lucas probably too much, but anyway.
You and me both. Which, by the way, a little tangent here, Amazon came up with their own Star Wars Alexa speakers, just so you know. I'm
not Googling at all. I'm definitely listening to you talk.
Exactly. So like you said, you and me we're supporting, but let's talk about something that you and me we will not agree on. It is our hat selection.
Yeah. Okay,
right?
So I will tell you, we both agree that 5950s are not the best.
No.
So we can start. So already you and I are kind of in the minority.
Right. We're there already.
I generally speaking really like how dad hats look on me. And until I discovered 3930s, that was my hat of choice. Mm-hmm. I discovered early on, though, displaying them how I display them doesn't always work. So I was putting stuff behind them to keep the crown filled. But the other thing about a 3930, I mean, a dad hat is, it's hard to tell, but because of how tight it fits, it gives me like almost painful hat hair. Mm-hmm. Whereas the 3930, it's loose enough.
And it's a little structure right in the front. Compared to what the one hat I'm wearing right now.
So exactly. I tease you all the time about it, but it's really as practical and silly as that. Like, I actually quite like the way I look in them, and I actually have several that my Iron Pigs hats is a dad hat. So
their brand is so awesome too.
Well, first of all, their brand is awesome. Get a 3930, guys. I'm serious. But that's really it. It's a hair thing and a display thing as much as it's anything.
Well, I have no hair, so I'm good there. So I've already, got that part out of the way. So boom, done. And then I wear them because, I get sunburn, and, if I don't wear a hat, it's,
Right. I mean, right. And you can't be at a ballpark without a hat.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I mean,
I love that. You know what?
And when Jessica does the dad hat with the ponytail through the back.
Yep.
All the things she wears, that's the thing that revs my engine the most.
You hear that, Jessica? Okay, so more dad hats for you.
More dad mom exactly. Although I buy her one for every one I get, and she wears 4 of them, so I don't know what to do.
My wife told me not to buy her any hats, so we're good there.
Nice.
I tried to buy my daughter. She's like, she doesn't need it. She's still growing, so stop it. I'm like, fine.
But dad hats are adjustable.
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna. So it's okay. We're saving money that way.
Yeah.
So we're almost getting to that point where we can, let's just wrap it up. But I want to finish up by telling me, do you ever feel any kind of guilt doing this, right? Going to these events and, putting it out there, right? Like, I mean, because I know it's hard, man. That's a lot of work that goes into making this. And then, like, I don't want to say guilt, but do you feel, someone you feel a little dejected? I was just like, man, I don't know if people are listening, or I don't know if it's making any effect, or if it, helping any at all.
So I do I'm definitely capable of getting in the weeds on that. And I tend to get in the weeds more on the other shows, which are, I think, more have different motivations behind them. I actually don't really look at, no, it's hard to avoid looking at Let's Get To's YouTube numbers. And again, I blame myself because I didn't start doing that part of it until much later.
Yeah.
But the podcast numbers, I don't really look at. I only look at it when the rankings come out. And every once in a while, we'll be like in the top 70 or 60 of baseball podcasts. And it's like, okay, that's cool. Of course, the next week we're 315. So who knows? I mean, there's nothing to it, but
it's all over the place.
Yeah, it's all over the place. And so I think especially with the way I structure my show, and I feel like the way you structured yours, a person can listen to it 2 years from now and it's the same. It doesn't matter. Like, so I see it. It's always cool to see people go back and like, oh, you listened to an episode from year 2 or whatever.
Yeah.
You said the guilt thing. And I will say, I do sometimes feel guilty being gone as much. Jess is an amazing partner who not only will, like, she's never once made me feel bad. I will say this: in 2019, our white German Shepherd was dying of cancer, and that was hard to be away. And I didn't really miss any major quality time, but it definitely was a distraction, emotionally. But I think my wife loves baseball as much as I do, and I think that makes it better. But definitely, I mean, definitely there are negative times with this. There are dark times when you're like, why? And I'll see a tweet from you, or I'll see a tweet from like MILB promos. And I'm like, okay, this is why. This group of people is why. And it's become a very self-sustaining thing for me from a motivational standpoint.
All right. So I said it one last question, but I got one more for you. And then I'm going to preface it by saying that we've had discussions, you and me, off rant, and and I'm someone who's dealing with like I don't know how people know, but like I have my own therapist, right? I deal with anxiety and all this, right? It's someone like myself, right? I never thought I would do that. And to me, I find that making a podcast and talking to people, it has helped me so much, right?
Look,
how has that helped you?
No, 100%. And again, I've talked openly on the show about dealing with issues of PTSD, and I do have a therapist that I meet with every Wednesday. And I think there's something to be said of when I pull an episode off and I feel like it came together the way I wanted. One of the examples this year was interviewing Calvin Schiraldi about his experience in Game 6 of the World Series in '86, and having that come off the way it does, and then the finished product to me is rewarding. I've accomplished something. I've done more than most people have done, and I know that I'm in some stupid competition with people, and I'm not, it's not maybe not the most healthy thing, but I've at least I accomplished something this week. And I think that is a big part of it. And another part of it is I hope it's doing stuff for other people, because, one of the places I'm the happiest is in a ballpark, and I feel much more settled and much more relaxed, especially like the last trip when we all took to Omaha, because I didn't have to shoot during the game. I was able to sit and hang out and talk about baseball. And I hope if some of that enthusiasm and that love, and I think it does for you, and I think it does with Paul, and definitely is with Pat, comes across the screen to people. If I can make that happen, then that's another area where I'm just like, this is something worth doing.
The way I'm looking at it, and I'll tell you a little story. Like, someone reached out to me and said, Ed, you have no idea what your show has meant to me with dealing with, like, I was dealing with a little bit of depression and all of this. And then they reached out to me, and I'm like, that is the most special thing. Like, if I ever have, I don't accomplish anything, I did something that it affected someone's life, and I'm making them happy. That's it. That's all I can ask for.
And I firmly believe that, and again, it just dates back to how I approached indie film from other people. I think that the way to be successful at something is to go at it with the right motivation, to put your heart into it and be generous 100%. Instead of figuring out what are my angles to make money on this thing. And I think, again, like, there's a reason why I respect you guys so much and consider you very much a part of our family, because I don't feel in indie film that motivation is rare. the sort of let's just be in this to love people. It's almost like how Star Wars used to fans used to be before we got toxic. So it's another show, by the way. But just to me, I think it really does just kind of sustain what I'm doing. And you and Paul and all the guys that are part of Let's Get To, I'm so thankful for y'all to keep me going. It's just that simple.
You've been an inspiration, my friend. So keep it going. Don't stop. And then I'm going to end this segment by saying, guys, please adjust your scorecard. Yes, we did have a special guest. And yes, it was your very own Jim. Thank you, my friend. Thank you for letting me do this.
Thanks for having me on.
Ladies and gentlemen, please adjust your scorecards. We have a special guest in the lineup.
And we're excited to welcome to the show, back to Let's Get To, friend of the show, CEDRIC THOMAS SMITH, friend of the show and film husband to me. But he's here talking about Memorial Day and his movie incoming, Losing Lalo. First of all, CEDRIC, how are you?
I am doing good, and it is great to be back. So good to see your face and good to see, be here.
Well, here's the thing, and we'll everybody quit listening for 10 seconds. We're like, I don't know, like a month and a half away from going to Mexico.
Oh, I know. Maybe at some point I'll go to my Mexico diet. I haven't done it yet, but yeah.
Well, this guy's dropped 25 since January, baby.
See, there you go. Now I have motivation.
This thing was skin tight when I bought it. Look at that.
Yeah.
Enough from my dietary habits. So, CEDRIC, you are one of the most prolific, award-winning filmmakers that I know. You are a cornerstone in my life, not just in my life, but in my filmmaking life, both with ARF and my kids and all that stuff. You're taking on a different challenge. So tell me a little bit about Losing Lalo, how it came about, and what you learned through the process of writing the film.
Okay, so with the San Angelo Revolution Film Festival and Discover San Angelo, I was the recipient of the Concho Creator Award, which was a $10,000 grant to make a film. And I didn't know what to do as far as creating a film. The original idea I had probably was not really going to work. So I wanted to do something that would bring unity. So I'm going to stop talking in code and just let's go. So So last year we were at the festival, and I remember walking by and someone referred to us as liberals. And I remember, I remember being so bothered by that, because I think we as a country, not trying to get political, but we've become so polarized and divided with each other. When we look at each other, we look for the differences instead of the common ground that we have with each other.
Right.
So Losing Lalo actually came about as a petty retort to that comment, because basically, I thought, what can bring us all together? And, we all sympathize no matter what side of the aisle you're on. And, our military, our soldiers, we all can rally behind them. And, the mental health, the veterans, so I wanted to do a piece on that. And so I started thinking about, veteran suicide, and I started researching it. And I mean, I went in deep on the research because I knew nothing about it.
Yeah.
I would fall into Reddit rabbit holes, listening to the soldier stories. I watched documentaries. I went on Apple Music. I found soldiers' playlists, so I would listen to that. And it was very impactful and eye-opening for me, because I never really paid attention to veteran suicide.
Yeah.
And how, they come back and, having to reacclimate to society. And, more importantly, not getting the mental health services that they need. So I decided to create this piece, which is on veteran suicide and the impact that this veteran suicide has on his family and his fellow, soldiers.
I think it's interesting because you nailed a couple of things on the head, and as someone who's been pretty open about PTSD on the show, because I feel like if I can talk about it, it means somebody else can. And I remember going to mental health meetings at the VA and it being group therapy. So let's take a bunch of guys that you want to be macho and tough, now have a group session.
Yeah.
It's just not wired that way. I'm curious though, as you live in a military town, how much of that kind of went into your filter when you started writing the piece?
So, San Antonio, we're called Military City. It did help, a little bit, but I think most of what inspired me was, trying to, treat the soldiers as, they're normal people and they want to be treated as normal, and they just have to kind of readjust to society. So I think, most of my inspiration came from my friends like you, Bill Haas, that are veterans or that are, military. And I think that's probably where a lot of my inspiration came from, because, most of the characters are named after you guys.
Well, the thing is, so for people should know about your writing is your writing's very emotional, but it's always very informed. You don't just write something that sugarcoats a situation. You will put emotion behind facts and information. Tell me a little bit about, I've seen different numbers. I've seen 23 veterans a day. I've seen 18. Either way, it's too many. What are some of the things you learned about the problem? And some of the things you learned about how much help is actually out there for vets?
The one thing I learned was that the numbers are big, and depending on where you go, the numbers, can change. So, I was reading like it was, one soldier an hour, but, I've also read, it's 48 per day. So it just depends on, whose stats and where they come out. A lot of the research is that there are organizations out there, like Wounded Warriors, but I feel like a lot of the help is not readily available. And that's the one thing I kind of picked up from the, documentaries that I watched, and, my little Reddit rabbit holes, was that it was a lot of red tape that these vets had to go through to get the mental help that they need. It was almost like they had to be in suicide crisis before they could finally get that help.
Yeah, and I'll preface this. Look, as somebody who's go to the vet, I think the doctors and nurses are great people who are doing a great job and are incredibly handcuffed by one of the worst bureaucracies you've ever heard of. So when we talk about the VA, we are not trashing the people on the front line. I'm talking about the people in Congress that should, fund it. Did you learn anything about that though? Like, is the VA, do they have enough services even available? You mentioned the two you mentioned were non-for-profits, like individuals started those. There's also 23 Valhalla, which I'm actually a big supporter of.
As far as, I didn't really research too much into what was offered, basically just based on what I, would find, when I was doing research, like on Reddit. But it just seemed like the federal funding and resources were limited. And, like I said, it was basically having to hop through a lot of, federal, BS, red tape to, get this kind of help. And, by then some of it was too late, and some of them were just kind of like, it's not going to, help.
Yeah, I think when I hear a lot of vets, both mental health and actual health, when they run into the VA bureaucracy, they just like, what's the point? It becomes their thing. I'm curious. Part of the deal of you winning the $10,000 was to film in San Angelo. And for those of us watching the show that aren't from Texas, San Angelo is not yet a film hub versus if you filmed in San Antonio or Austin or Houston or Dallas. How has that been a challenge, but also a benefit to the script so far?
I think the challenge was, basically the initial, what do I shoot in San Angelo? Right. That was probably the challenge, finding, what is going to work, as far as the benefits, what I'm finding is San Angelo is very friendly, very film friendly, whereas, and we're in film cities, like you, especially, you're in Austin, right. It's kind of hard to get a location. For example, a bar. Yeah. In Austin, you would probably have to, give a location fee. You probably have to, just go through all kinds of stuff. Whereas in San Angelo, I talked to Discover San Angelo, and I'm like, well, I kind of need a bar. And they're like, okay, next thing I know, hey, my friend has a bar. you can shoot there. And it's like, oh, okay. So, a lot of, they're excited, because, it's film coming to town, in their minds, it's Hollywood coming to town now. I'm not Hollywood, but, so, that there's an excitement, with us coming down that it's kind of infectious because, sometimes you don't get it in your big communities.
Yeah, I was thinking about that when you mentioned that. I think I usually found like one bar that would let us shoot, so all my films at least had one scene in the same bar. Like it became like the bar universe, whatever it is. A couple more questions though. Your cast is diverse. It's different, like it always is. You've got a bunch of new actors working for you, but you have Lish, our sister, basically, who's always there. How much is having someone like Lish that knows you, knows your style, knows how to get to work, and then how exciting is it to work with somebody new?
Ironically, Calvin Walker did the casting for Losing Lalo. So we basically cast a bunch of people I've never worked with. Lish is the only person I've worked with before, and I had written that role for her. So, with Lish, there's a sense of home because she's been with me all these years. So. We shot the parents scenes a couple of weeks ago, and it was nice to work with new people and just, it's kind of, this whole new group of criers and, good, just these fantastic actors. So I look forward to, when we go to San Angelo in 2 to 3 weeks, because I would have never worked with any of these people except, Alicia.
Yeah. I mean, it is fun. It's interesting because I was always either super excited or super duper scared of new people. And that's maybe just my personality. We already have some premiere information. Where can people see it the first time? And do you have an idea yet on what distribution after that initial screening looks like?
So we're going to premiere it at the San Angelo Revolution Film Festival this year. So that's going to be, it's the last week of September, I believe, September 29th and 30th.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So, we look forward to, premiering it there. And then after that, we're going to, put it on the film festival circuit, see what we can do with it. Ultimately, I think I'm more excited about getting it out to organizations. Military organizations that could use it, to maybe get help for, the soldiers, the veterans. I think, one of our lead actors, his name is Johnny Ray Diaz. So he's, hopefully his pool can kind of help. And I just think the message overall is probably something that's much bigger than putting it on the film festival circuit.
Yeah, and it's interesting as we wrap up. I had the privilege of reading the script, and I had intended to pop in on the set, and I was so shook that there was no way I could be on set for that. Like I just knew. I'm excited to see it in theaters. I'm terrified to see it in theaters. We might just have to sit in the back with some Vicodin and see, or not Vicodin, Valium, and see what happens. Or Vicodin, I guess.
Yeah, I think we're just gonna have like little pill dispensers we can just pass out, little prepackaged pills in a cocktail.
Have a seat, yeah.
I look forward to it. The story I think is probably my favorite script I've written. It opened me up to a world that I didn't know about, and that comes with a lot of pain because, now I sponge in all of, what the veterans go through. And I mean, I can watch something that's military related and all of a sudden I'm in tears and I'm just like, I'll do a comedy next.
And I'll come be on set for that one. Yeah. When I was reading it, cause I think since I've been out, I've lost 3 friends to suicide. The most recent one about 11 months ago. And so, when we go into Lalo's head, I just got so, I don't know, stressed and sad that if that's what he was going through, it just was it was very well written and really got me. So congratulations to that.
Thanks, brother. Yeah, it's definitely, like I said, it's very, for me, it's very heartfelt. It's very, like, it grabs me. And I mean, I can get into a depression real quick over it. So, I just, hopefully it'll all translate well on film.
And then
I think
Viva
it
la
will.
Mexico. Yeah.
Yeah, and then next thing you know, once we wrap, we're on a beach, at an all-inclusive. Maybe I pass out, maybe I don't. Who
Maybe you
knows?
don't. Well, don't
Yeah.
pass out before the premiere. Cedric, thanks so much for jumping on Let's Get To.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
And now, on to close it out, the right-hander from Houston, Texas, James Christopher.
So that does wrap up this episode of Let's Get To. Thank you so much to the Round Rock Express for having us out for Military Appreciation Day. Now, next week, we have another military-themed episode. We are going to be coming to you on June 6th, talking about the importance of that day in American history. And we're coming to you from the Corpus Christi Blue Ghost as they celebrate and remember those lost on Memorial Day. So remember, guys, the summer is on us. Get out to the ballpark, get you some peanuts, get you some Cracker Jack, and most importantly, let's get to. Let's Get To is presented by Twitchy Dolphin Media. Creative directors, Jessica Bybee Jedgetts. Executive producers, James Christopher, Andy Tumcheson, and Scott McIntyre. Produced by Andrew Nelson and Eric Mertens. Associate producers Timothy Jedgetts and Jess Canaster. All content created by Let's Get To is the sole property of Twitchy Dolphin Media. All content created by teams covered in the episode are the sole property of the trademark holders.